She doesn't respect words. She respects silence. She respects distance. That's the truth most men never realize until it's far too late. Think about it. How many times have you poured your heart into long messages, explained your intentions, and reassured her of your loyalty? How many times have you believed that devotion alone would secure her respect? Most men think that consistency, promises, and constant availability will make a woman value them more. But here's the harsh reality. It doesn't. The more you chase, the more you explain, the more you give without boundaries, the less she sees you as a man to respect. Why? Because respect isn't born from overgiving. It's born from self-control. It's born from your ability to step away completely, not halfway, not while secretly waiting for her return, but fully and decisively. And when you do that, everything shifts. She begins to notice what your presence once carried, because now she feels the weight of your absence. That's when respect begins. Not because you punished her, not because you played games, but because you elevated yourself above neediness. You showed her without a single word that your value isn't dependent on her attention. Most men never discover this truth until it's too late. They spend years trying to prove themselves, drowning in explanations, bending their lives around someone else's moods, only to end up ignored, overlooked, and drained. But the man who understands Stoicism knows a higher truth. Self-sufficiency is power. A Stoic doesn't beg for recognition. He doesn't plead to be seen. He lives in such a way that his worth cannot be questioned, because it no longer depends on anyone else. Marcus Aurelius wrote that peace comes from within, not from how others respond. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, especially when we imagine that her distance means our collapse. The Stoics remind us that control is never external. Control is always internal. And when you take that to heart, you realize the strongest move you can ever make in relationships is not chasing, not explaining, not pleading. It is detachment. Calm, complete detachment. And that's what this message is about. Today we're going to uncover 10 Stoic truths about why a woman only begins to respect you when you detach completely. Each truth will challenge what you've been taught about attraction, loyalty, and commitment. Each truth will reveal why over-effort kills respect and why silence and direction build it. But let's make one thing clear. This is not about tricks or manipulation. Detachment isn't a game to make her chase you. It isn't a tactic to spark jealousy. Detachment is a philosophy, a way of living. It's the art of reclaiming your power, your discipline, your clarity. When you stop orbiting around her and instead center yourself in your own mission, you don't just change the way she sees you, you change the way you see yourself. And ironically, that's when the polarity flips. That's when she feels the absence of your presence. That's when curiosity wakes up. That's when respect begins. Not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. Brothers, this is Stoic advice for men. If you've ever felt taken for granted, if you've ever been drained by giving too much, or if you've ever wondered why devotion wasn't enough, this message is for you. By the end, you'll understand why silence speaks louder than words, why detachment is not weakness but strength, and why the man who can walk away with peace is the one she'll never forget. So stay with me, and let's step into the first truth together. 1. Respect begins where neediness ends. Respect is not born from constant presence. It is born from the courage to walk away. That single truth separates the man who is overlooked from the man who is respected. Most men believe the more available they are, the more she will value them. They confuse presence with strength. They think that always being there, always saying yes, always reassuring her will secure loyalty and respect. But in reality, it creates the opposite. It breeds complacency. She begins to feel that your energy is endless, that your devotion is guaranteed, that she never has to earn it. And when something is guaranteed, it is no longer respected. A man who cannot detach is a man who places her on a pedestal. He silently communicates that his life revolves around her presence, that her attention is the oxygen he cannot live without. And no woman respects a man who treats her like a goddess while abandoning himself. The harder you try to prove your worth to her, the more invisible you become. Contrast this with the man who embraces detachment. He doesn't vanish in anger. He doesn't retreat as a tactic. He simply refuses to live as if his value depends on her recognition. He doesn't beg for her validation, because his validation comes from within. That's the essence of Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius warned against being ruled by externals, whether praise, attention, or affection. The Stoic man knows that to be enslaved by need is to forfeit strength. Think of it this way: the moment you stop trying to fill yourself with her approval is the moment she begins to feel your absence differently. She notices that you no longer orbit around her. She senses that you're not emotionally tethered to her reactions, and for the first time she begins to wonder, what if I lose him? That question alone shifts the entire dynamic. Picture two men. The first texts immediately, explains every silence, adjusts his plans to match hers, and reacts to every mood shift with desperate effort. She may appreciate his loyalty for a moment, but deep down, she feels the weight of his neediness. It suffocates attraction. It kills respect. The second man is different. He cares, but he doesn't cling. He shows up with presence, but he doesn't beg for reassurance. When she withdraws, he doesn't panic. When she tests, he doesn't crumble. His life remains steady, rooted in his own mission. And in that steadiness, she feels something unfamiliar: admiration. Because she knows he doesn't need her to feel whole. That kind of independence commands respect without ever asking for it. This is the paradox men struggle to accept. The less you need her, the more she begins to respect you. It's not about indifference, it's about balance. It's about showing her, and more importantly yourself, that you can choose her, but you don't need her. And when that truth settles into your energy, everything changes. The Stoics called this self-sufficiency the foundation of virtue. Seneca taught that the man who depends on another's happiness for his own is forever a slave. But the man who carries his own peace, his own purpose, his own clarity, cannot be shaken by loss. That is the man a woman respects, not because he demands it, but because he embodies it. So ask yourself, are you showing up from strength or from need? Are you loving her because you choose to, or because you fear who you are without her? The answers matter, because respect does not begin when you give more. Respect begins when you are willing to walk away. And here's the irony. The moment you are free to walk away is the moment she begins to chase what she once took for granted. That is not manipulation. It's polarity. It's the natural result of a man reclaiming his self-respect. Brothers, remember this. The foundation of respect is not endless giving. It is self-sufficiency. The day you stop needing her is the day she finally sees you. 2. Stop explaining. Start living. The more you explain, the less she respects you. That's a reality most men resist, because they believe words can rescue them. They believe if they just explain harder, if they justify their every move, if they pour enough paragraphs into her phone, she'll finally understand and value them. But it never works that way. In fact, it achieves the opposite. When you begin explaining, you communicate insecurity. You tell her silently, I don't trust that my actions speak loudly enough, so I need to add words to fill the silence. But the silence is what carries weight. The silence is what makes her feel. When you rush to explain, you strip away the mystery, the tension, the dignity that comes from restraint. Women don't respect endless explanations. They respect clarity. They respect action. They respect the man who is so centered in himself that he doesn't need to narrate his worth. And that's where Stoicism steps in. The Stoics taught the power of apatheia, not cold indifference but emotional clarity. It is the discipline of remaining steady when the world demands a reaction. A Stoic doesn't argue for his value. He lives it. He doesn't chase understanding. He embodies strength so quietly that others must come to their own realization. And in relationships, this translates directly. Stop trying to convince her. Start living in such a way that no words are necessary. Think about how men usually react when distance begins. She pulls back, she grows cold, and panic sets in. Most men write long explanations, trying to defend why they're stepping back or why things changed. They justify themselves, hoping the right combination of words will make her return. But what they don't see is that every extra word weakens their position. Every explanation hands her the frame. Now imagine the opposite. She pulls away. Instead of chasing, you take a step back, not in anger, but in self-respect. You don't write a speech. You don't defend your silence. You simply redirect your energy. You go to the gym. You dive deeper into your craft. You invest in people and projects that elevate you. You stop talking about what you're going to do, and you start doing it. That absence of explanation is powerful. It forces her to feel what words could never deliver. The contrast. She notices you're not orbiting around her anymore. She feels that your attention, once given freely, is now focused elsewhere. And in that shift, respect begins to grow. This isn't about punishing her. It's about protecting your own dignity. Because every time you over-explain, you surrender a piece of yourself. You lower your value by showing her that her opinion defines your peace. A Stoic man refuses that trade. He understands that his worth is not up for debate. It's not a case he argues. It's a life he lives. So the next time you feel the urge to send paragraphs, to clarify every silence, to plead for understanding, pause. Breathe. Remember that your strength is not in the noise of your words, but in the stillness of your presence. Let your silence do the speaking. Let your life do the proving. Because the man who stops explaining and starts living becomes undeniable. She doesn't respect him because he argued his case well. She respects him because he didn't need to. And that quiet confidence, that refusal to justify, is what separates the forgettable from the unforgettable. 3. Her uncertainty is your power. Uncertainty is not your weakness. It is your power. Most men don't understand this because they believe clarity always keeps a woman close. They think if she knows exactly how much she means, if they constantly reassure her, if they remove every trace of doubt, she'll value them more. But the opposite is true. When she knows you're always there, always available, always predictable, she takes you for granted. A woman only begins to feel respect when she senses that she can't fully predict you anymore. Not because you're playing games or trying to confuse her, but because you are no longer emotionally tethered to her every move. You stop reacting to every silence. You stop chasing every shift in her mood. You stop making yourself an open book, desperate for her approval. Instead, you choose mystery, not chaos, but calm unpredictability. This shift creates curiosity, and curiosity is the soil in which respect grows. When she doesn't know how you'll respond, when she doesn't know if you'll still be there no matter what, she begins to measure her actions more carefully. Your detachment forces her to feel what your presence used to provide. She suddenly realizes that the man she assumed would never walk away actually can, and that realization changes everything. Think about how most men react when a woman pulls back. She sends fewer texts, seems distracted, maybe even says she needs space. Immediately panic sets in. He doubles down. He texts more. He overcompensates with attention. He tries to fix uncertainty with explanations. And with every move, he makes himself more predictable, more desperate, more forgettable. Now picture a Stoic man in the same situation. She grows distant. He notices, but he doesn't react. He doesn't send paragraphs demanding clarity. He doesn't beg for answers. Instead, he mirrors the distance with calm. He respects her choice and keeps walking forward on his path. His energy doesn't collapse around her silence. It remains steady, grounded, unshaken. And in that steadiness, she feels something she didn't expect: loss. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That is the heart of this truth. You don't argue for your place in her life. You don't debate your worth. You embody it. You become the man who doesn't need her validation to stay grounded, and that man is unforgettable. Understand this: her uncertainty is not the enemy. It is the mirror that reveals your strength. When she doesn't give you answers, when she tests your presence, when she withholds clarity, those are the moments where your character is tested. Do you crumble, or do you remain steady? If you remain steady, If you keep living with purpose and discipline, she will feel the difference. She will feel what it's like to lose the version of you that once gave so freely. And here's the paradox. The more you resist filling the silence with explanations, the more powerful the silence becomes. Your absence becomes a message. Your restraint becomes attraction. Your unpredictability becomes respect. Brothers, if you want to master this kind of presence, if you want to become the man whose calm silence commands more than words ever could, then subscribe to Stoic Advice for Men and walk this path with us. Because once you learn to embrace uncertainty as power, you'll never need to chase respect again. 4. The man who walks away with peace. Anyone can walk away in anger. Anyone can storm out, slam the door, or throw words like weapons. But walking away with peace in your eyes, that is power. That is presence. And that is what leaves a lasting mark. When a woman no longer respects you, when she pulls away or tests your limits, most men respond with rage. They argue, they demand answers, they raise their voices in desperation. But anger doesn't earn respect. Anger reveals dependence. Anger shows that your emotions are still tied to her choices. The Stoics painted a different picture. They compared a man's spirit to a rock at the shore. The waves crash, the storms rage, but the rock remains unmoved. It doesn't fight the water. It doesn't curse the sky. It simply stands in its place, steady and unshaken. That's what it means to walk away with peace. You're not leaving to punish her, and you're not leaving to make a scene. You're leaving because your self-respect matters more than forcing someone to see your value. And here's the paradox. The calmer you walk away, the louder your silence becomes. The absence of drama speaks volumes. She may not admit it out loud, but it lingers. Because what haunts her isn't the memory of your shouting. It's the memory of your stillness. The way you didn't crumble. The way you didn't chase. The way you simply chose peace over chaos. Imagine this in real life. She sends you a vague text, something she knows used to trigger you. Maybe it's short, dismissive, or filled with mixed signals. The old version of you would have responded instantly, writing a long explanation, asking questions, or demanding clarity. But this time, you don't. You don't jump at crumbs. You don't feed the uncertainty. Instead, you let it sit. You stay grounded. You redirect your energy into something productive. Your body, your craft, your mission. That silence, that refusal to be pulled into emotional games, is what changes everything. Because she feels the difference. She feels the void your attention once filled. She recognizes that you are no longer bound by her moods or her manipulations. And slowly, respect begins to rise. Not because you forced it, but because you showed her something rare. Discipline. Walking away with peace isn't coldness. It's clarity. It's the decision to protect your dignity rather than beg for attention. It's choosing your path instead of trying to hold on to someone who no longer values it. And that choice, more than any argument, is what commands respect. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily. Control lies only within your own mind, never in the choices of others. When you embody that truth, when you refuse to hand over your emotional stability, you show a strength that cannot be ignored. So remember this. She might forget your words, she might forget your promises, but she will never forget the day you walked away without anger, without noise, without breaking yourself to stay. She will remember the stillness. She will remember the calm. And long after the moment passes, she will respect the man who valued his peace above all else. That is the power of the Stoic man. Not the one who leaves in rage, but the one who leaves in silence, carrying nothing but clarity. 5. Detach to rediscover direction. When you detach, you don't just walk away from her, you return to yourself. That's the truth most men overlook. They think detachment is about punishing her or proving a point, but in reality, it's about correction. It's about realignment. It's about rediscovering your direction. Too many men lose themselves the moment a woman enters their life. They start skipping gym sessions just to be available. They stay up late, neglect their mornings, and sacrifice their standards in the name of attention. At first, she might enjoy the extra time, but slowly, something changes. She sees the man she admired, the man with discipline, focus, and drive, fade into someone who revolves only around her. And that's when respect begins to slip away. Why? Because she didn't fall for a man who abandons his mission. She was drawn to the man who had one. She respected the man who had his own center, his own fire, his own standards. When you give all that up, you lose the very energy that attracted her in the first place. Detachment is the solution. Not detachment fueled by bitterness, but detachment rooted in clarity. When you step back from her world, you step back into yours. You begin to remember who you were before you made her the center. You reclaim your mornings. You train harder. You sharpen your mind. You rebuild the structure of your life piece by piece. And the more grounded you become in your own path, the more respect you quietly command. This is what the Stoics meant by eudaimonia, a flourishing life aligned with virtue and direction. Not a life distracted by validation, but a life driven by inner purpose. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." When her distance or her indifference becomes the spark that pushes you back into alignment, you haven't lost, you've advanced. You've turned distraction into direction. Consider this example. A man is dating a woman, and in the excitement he begins sacrificing his routines. He cancels gym sessions, he drops projects, he spends all his energy on being available. At first she smiles, but over time she begins to notice. He's no longer the man she respected, he's become dependent. And without realizing it, she begins to test him, to pull away, to question if the man she admired even exists anymore. But imagine the opposite. Imagine that instead of chasing, he detaches, not out of anger, but with quiet certainty. He realigns with his mission. He sharpens his standards. He shows up for his life first. And in that moment, something shifts, not just in her perception, but in his. He stops trying to prove himself to her, and he starts proving himself to himself. That is when real respect begins to form. And here's the paradox. When you detach, you don't become colder, you become clearer. You stop sending mixed signals. You stop trying to be two men at once, the man with a mission and the man orbiting her. You become one thing, a man centered in purpose. And that energy doesn't just change how she sees you, it changes how you see yourself. Brothers, detachment is not rejection, it's redirection. It's the moment you stop orbiting around her world and start moving forward on your own path again. And in that clarity, in that discipline, you become the man she respects, whether she admits it or not. If this resonates, join Stoic Advice for Men, where men like you reclaim their purpose. Because when you choose direction over distraction, you don't just earn respect, you live a life worthy of it. 6. Let her feel the void, not hear it. Silence is louder than any speech. You don't need dramatic exits, vague status updates, or cryptic quotes on social media. You don't need to broadcast your absence. A man of discipline doesn't announce, he simply withdraws. And in that withdrawal, he creates something far more powerful than words: the void. Most men try to make their point by talking. They leave long explanations. They post about their pain. They drop hints online, hoping she'll notice and come back. But here's the truth. None of that commands respect. Words rarely change her perception. What does change it is the unmistakable shift when your energy is no longer directed at her. The void cannot be ignored. It's the quiet space where your presence used to live. It's the sudden absence of your texts, your calls, your constant availability. And that silence does something words never could. It forces her to feel. She begins to notice the gap. She begins to remember what your presence carried. And for the first time, she feels the reality of what life is like without you. Think about it in practice. A man pours endlessly into a woman, calls her daily, checks on her constantly, bends his schedule to fit hers. She grows used to this rhythm. It becomes background noise. Then one day, he pulls that energy back, not to manipulate, but because he's tired of giving to someone who doesn't reciprocate. He doesn't make a scene. He doesn't send a goodbye speech. He simply redirects that energy into himself. the gym, his business, his craft, his peace. What happens? She notices. The quiet unsettles her. The missing attention challenges her ego. The absence makes her reflect in ways that words never could, not because he shouted his value, but because he took it with him. This is the Stoic way. True strength doesn't come from loud reactions. It comes from restraint. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily not to waste energy on things outside his control. Your control lies not in her response, but in your discipline. By refusing to announce, you prove that you don't need to be heard. You need to be grounded. And here's the danger most men fall into: partial detachment. They pull back halfway but still check if she viewed their story, still drop hints, still hope she reacts. That's not silence. That's noise in disguise. And it robs the void of its power. Only complete withdrawal, calm, quiet, and focused, creates the kind of absence she truly feels. Understand this. The void is not about making her chase. It's about protecting your energy. It's about reclaiming what you've been giving away without return. And in doing so, you restore your center. You remind yourself that your value doesn't depend on her recognition. And ironically, that's when she begins to feel the weight of what she lost. So stop trying to explain your absence. Stop trying to hint at it. Let her feel it. Redirect your focus inward. Because the man who learns to withdraw without noise is the man who leaves the deepest impact. Not because he spoke louder, but because his silence echoed longer. That is the power of the void. 7. Rejection. Doesn't shrink you. Attachment does. Rejection doesn't destroy you. Attachment does. That may sound strange at first, but think about it. The sting of rejection is sharp, but it's momentary. What really keeps men broken is not the rejection itself. It's what they do after. It's the clinging, the replaying of memories, the endless search for closure that keeps them trapped. She may tell you it's over. She may act like you never mattered. And yes, those words cut deep. But the wound is not what weakens you. It's the decision to stay emotionally glued to her long after she's gone. That's the real poison. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And nowhere is that more true than in rejection. The reality is simple. She left. But the imagination creates an endless spiral. You wonder what she's doing. You stalk her social media. You analyze every word she said, looking for hidden meaning. You carry the story forward long after the chapter is closed. And in doing so, you suffer 1,000 times more than you need to. This is where most men collapse. They confuse rejection with destruction. They believe that being turned away means they are less, that their worth has been diminished. But that's not true. Rejection doesn't shrink you. In fact, it can strengthen you, if you let go. It's the attachment, the refusal to release, that corrodes your strength. Picture this: a man gets rejected. Instead of moving forward, he spends weeks scrolling through her profiles, looking for clues. He talks endlessly about her to his friends, replaying old conversations, asking what went wrong. He waits for her to reach out. His life stalls, his energy bleeds, and he grows weaker by the day. Not because of her rejection, but because of his attachment to it. Now picture the Stoic alternative. He feels the sting because he's human, but he doesn't fight reality. He accepts it. He breathes through it. And then he detaches. He doesn't chase. He doesn't plead. He doesn't stalk her updates or rehearse speeches in his head. Instead, he turns inward. He refocuses on his mission, his craft, his discipline. He grows sharper, calmer, stronger. And with every day that passes, he transforms rejection from a wound into a catalyst. That's what Stoicism teaches us. Pain is not the enemy. Resistance to pain is. You don't need to escape rejection. You need to escape the stories you tell yourself afterward. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to distinguish between what is in his control and what is not. Her decision? Not in your control. Your response? Always in your control. So here's the truth. Rejection is not the end of your story. Attachment is. The longer you hold on, the longer you delay your growth. The sooner you release, the sooner you rise. And here's the paradox every man must face. When you stop clinging to the woman who rejected you, when you no longer seek her validation or her closure, you regain something far more valuable: your dignity. And often, that's exactly when respect begins. Not because you chased it, but because you let go of needing it. Brothers, if you're ready to stop suffering in imagination and rise with clarity, subscribe to Stoic Advice for Men. Here, we walk the path of discipline, presence, and self-respect. Because rejection doesn't shrink you, only attachment does. And once you let go, you'll realize the strength was always in you, not in her approval. 8. Discipline is the new desire. Desire used to drive you. You wanted her attention, her approval, her time. You shaped your days around her replies, adjusted your energy to her moods, and believed that your devotion would earn respect. But here's the paradox. The man she respects is not the one consumed by desire. It's the one ruled by discipline. Discipline is the new desire. A man's value does not rise because he sends good morning texts on time or because he makes himself endlessly available. It rises when he shows that his life is built on order, not craving. It rises when his foundation is so steady that no silence, no rejection, and no absence can shake him. A Stoic man is not fueled by the whims of emotion. He is driven by his mission, his growth, his standards. He wakes before the sun, not because he's chasing someone, but because he's chasing his potential. He trains his body because strength is his responsibility. He sharpens his mind because wisdom is his weapon. He builds with his hands, with his effort, with his time, because he refuses to remain stagnant. And ironically, that's what pulls respect from her. Not your begging, not your longing, not your restless desire. What pulls respect is when she sees you are governed by something far greater than her approval, your discipline. Seneca once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." The same is true for a man's respect. It does not come from the abundance of things you chase, but from the discipline to want less. The less you crave from her, the more you radiate strength. The less you demand from others, the more undeniable your presence becomes. Think about the difference. Most men crumble when she pulls away. They spiral. They send messages. They wait by the phone. They perform, hoping to rekindle attraction through need. But the disciplined man does none of that. She goes cold, and he remains steady. She withdraws, and he doesn't beg. He builds. He is up at dawn, training. He is studying while others scroll. He is investing while others complain. And in that rhythm of discipline, his life becomes proof of his worth. Imagine her perspective. She once expected you to orbit her world. She expected that when she texted, you'd reply instantly, that when she tested, you'd chase harder. But suddenly, she notices the shift. You are not waiting. You are not begging. You are not restless. Instead, you are focused. The gym, the books, the business, the purpose, these have become your orbit. And without realizing it, she begins to respect you again, not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. Discipline is not glamorous. It doesn't sparkle in the moment. It doesn't give the instant rush that desire does, but it builds something deeper, unshakable presence. The man who is disciplined becomes undeniable, not because he craves less, but because he has aligned himself with more. More virtue, more clarity, more strength. And this is the core of Stoicism. It is not about killing emotion. It's about mastering it. It's about ensuring that your days are ruled by principles, not impulses. That your mornings belong to discipline, not distraction. That your peace is guarded by clarity, not craving. So understand this. Women may be drawn by desire, but they respect discipline. And once you shift your focus from chasing her to mastering yourself, you stop asking for respect and start commanding it. Because at the end of the day, desire fades, but discipline leaves a mark that cannot be ignored. 9. You don't pull back, you evolve. Detachment is not retreat, it is transformation. When most men think about pulling back, they imagine going quiet, ignoring her, or waiting for her to notice their absence. But that's not evolution, that's performance. True detachment is not about sulking in silence. It's about becoming a man she no longer recognizes because you've outgrown the version of yourself who once needed her. You don't pull back, you evolve. Think about it. When she pulls away, many men respond with shallow tactics. They stop texting, but deep down they're still waiting. They withdraw attention, but they're secretly watching her every move online. They go silent, but only to provoke a reaction. That is not growth. It's manipulation in disguise. And she feels it. She knows you're still tethered. Respect doesn't come from pretending. It comes from becoming. Evolution means you no longer orbit her at all. Your silence is not an act. It's the natural result of a man who is too busy building himself to explain why he stopped chasing. You stop obsessing over whether she sees your story because you're too focused on writing your own. You stop thinking about how she perceives you because your discipline has shifted your focus inward. You stop waiting for her because you've already moved forward. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Her distance, her rejection, her silence, these are not obstacles. They are the path itself. They are the catalyst that pushes you into evolution. Every ounce of energy you once wasted trying to decode her becomes the energy you now invest in becoming sharper, stronger, wiser. Picture this. She pulls back. The old you would spiral, scrolling her social media, overthinking her silence, trying to bump into her by chance. But the evolved you? He doesn't have the time. He's in the gym, sweating through discipline. He's building his business, stacking results day by day. He's feeding his mind with wisdom while others drown in distractions. Slowly, he becomes unrecognizable, not to punish her, but because he has truly leveled up. And here's the paradox. When you evolve so fully that you no longer care if she notices, that's when she begins to. She looks back and realizes the man she thought she had figured out no longer exists. In his place is someone sharper, calmer, more grounded. A man who no longer seeks her attention but commands respect simply by how he carries himself. This is the Stoic way. Pain is not an excuse, it's fuel. Distance is not a loss, it's direction. Rejection is not the end. It's the beginning of a new version of you. The Stoics didn't waste time mourning what was outside their control. They used every challenge as material for growth, and when you adopt that mindset, you stop retreating and start evolving. So ask yourself, are you merely pulling back, waiting for her to notice? Or are you evolving so radically that it no longer matters if she does? Because the truth is, the moment you stop caring about her recognition is the moment she begins to feel it anyway. Not because you demanded respect, but because you embodied it. Brothers, if you believe in evolving, not chasing, join us at Stoic Advice for Men and evolve in silence with men worldwide. Because when you stop pulling back and start transforming, you don't just change how she sees you, you change how you see yourself. 10. Let her chase the version she ignored. There comes a point when chasing ends, not because she told you to stop, but because you finally realize your energy is worth more. And in that moment, everything changes. When you evolve, when you embrace silence, when you build a life rooted in discipline, you stop being the man she once ignored. You stop being the man who needed her validation, who rearranged his world to keep her close. Instead, you become the man she never thought she could lose. And now, if she wants anything from you, she has to chase it. But here's the key. You don't evolve for revenge. You don't glow up to spark jealousy. You don't level up just to make her regret walking away. That's still attachment. That's still giving her the center. The Stoic man doesn't evolve to hurt. He evolves to heal. He evolves to return to himself. He evolves because his worth was never supposed to be borrowed from another person's attention. And ironically, that's exactly what makes her notice. She sees your progress. She sees the sharpness in your body, the discipline in your routine, the calm in your presence. She sees that your life no longer revolves around her orbit. And for the first time, she feels the sting of losing what she once took for granted. Picture this. She scrolls online and sees glimpses of your growth. You didn't post to impress her. You posted to document your journey. She hears through mutual friends that you've been advancing in your career, training harder, becoming more focused. Suddenly, she realizes the man she dismissed is no longer waiting in the same place. You're not watching her stories. You're not dropping hints. You're not orbiting her world. You've become someone else entirely, someone she no longer has easy access to. That's when the polarity flips. The uncertainty she once gave you now belongs to her. She begins to question, did I misjudge him? Did I ignore something rare? Did I lose someone I'll never meet again? But by then, it no longer matters, because your growth was never about her. It was always about you. The Stoic lesson here is freedom. True freedom is not in winning her back, it's in letting go with dignity. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. You cannot control her choices. You cannot control her perception, but you can control your evolution. You can control your discipline. You can control the man you are becoming. And once you embrace that, you stop orbiting around the past. You stop performing for her attention. You stop chasing recognition. You simply rise. And in rising, you become unforgettable. Not because you forced her to remember, but because your presence now carries a weight she can't ignore. This is the paradox every Stoic man must face. The more you let go, the more she feels your absence. The more you focus inward, the more she notices outward. But by then, you're already walking a higher path. You've chosen peace over performance, purpose over chasing, evolution over stagnation. So let her chase the version she ignored. Let her sit with the regret of overlooking what she couldn't understand. But never let that be your goal. Your goal is freedom. Your goal is dignity. Your goal is becoming a man so aligned with discipline and clarity that nothing, not even her regret, defines your worth. Because in the end, respect doesn't come from chasing her. It comes from becoming the man who no longer needs to. We've walked through 10 truths, each one peeling back the illusions that keep men trapped in cycles of neediness and overgiving. And every single one points to the same conclusion. A woman only begins to respect you when you no longer need her to. Think about it. Respect does not grow from paragraphs of explanation. It doesn't blossom from endless loyalty without boundaries. It doesn't rise because you chased harder, gave more, or begged louder. No. Respect begins in the silence. Respect begins when you detach, not halfway, not pretending, but completely. In the first truth, we saw that respect starts where neediness ends. A man who cannot detach, who worships her presence, forfeits his dignity. But the man who can walk away, who refuses to depend on her for validation, commands respect without saying a word. We learned next that explaining only erodes your value. The Stoic man doesn't justify his silence, he embodies it. He doesn't argue for his worth, he lives it. Then we uncovered the paradox of uncertainty. The moment you stop being predictable, the moment you stop reacting to every shift, she feels the weight of losing what she once assumed would always be there. Walking away in peace revealed another layer. Anyone can storm out in anger, but few can leave in stillness. And it's that stillness that lingers, that haunts, that earns respect. From there, detachment led us back to ourselves. Rediscovering discipline, mission, and direction is not punishment, it's correction. It's the man returning to the path he should have never abandoned. We saw that the void speaks louder than any status update. The absence of your attention is the sharpest reminder of your presence. And we saw that rejection isn't the problem. Attachment is. You are not broken because she walked away. You are broken if you remain chained to her memory. Then came discipline, the new desire. Women may be drawn to charm, but they respect discipline. They admire the man who governs his life by structure, not craving. And evolution sealed the message. You don't just pull back, you transform. You become unrecognizable, not because you played games, but because you leveled up beyond recognition. Finally, we faced the last paradox. She may end up chasing the version she once ignored. But by then, it doesn't matter. Because your evolution was never about revenge. It was never about making her regret. It was about reclaiming yourself. That is freedom. That is dignity. That is Stoicism in action. Brothers, the Stoic message is clear. This is not a strategy to win her back. This is not a trick to manipulate respect. This is a mindset for life. The strongest man is the one who no longer lives for her validation, but for his own evolution. That man cannot be broken, because his peace is no longer on loan to anyone else. So let me ask you, are you living for her validation or your own evolution? That question cuts deeper than any technique, because it determines whether you'll spend your life chasing respect or commanding it. If this message gave you clarity, subscribe to Stoic Advice for Men. Like, comment, and share this with a brother who needs it. Together, we'll build a generation of men who choose peace, purpose, and power. A generation of men who walk in silence, who live with discipline, and who never forget that the strongest move is always the one made in peace. Stay grounded, stay disciplined, and remember, you don't need her respect to rise. You only need your own.